went onto the great thing called the internet. You know, there's loads of pictures of you out there.
My face, I wear it.
You wear it, there's no avoiding it. Well, well, I can certainly hear myself on here. Are you being picked up by the microphones at all? Just say a couple of words. So.
Yeah. Are we?
Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Well, in fact, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself. I think that's probably the best way of testing out the microphones and hearing a little bit more about you. So, Chrystal, would you like to go first? Just tell us a bit about who you are, a bit about your background, and then we'll get into some questions.
So, I'm Chrystal. I'm lead writer at Larian Studios. I'm based in Guildford, down the road from here. I have a really odd road into game dev, which is that I was for many years a storyteller who didn't know it could get paid to tell stories in games. So I wandered through the lists of variously advertising, documentary photography, eventually found my way to a narrative-based mobile startup game. And then from there, worked on the craft and worked my way to here, I guess.
My name is Arthur. I'm the studio head in our Ukie studio, based in London myself, but I commute to Guildford daily, pretty much, to help run the studio. I originally started about 10 years ago as a modder on a game that you might have heard about called Mountain Blade. Working here in development has always been like a dream career for me, still is. But my original education is in nuclear physics.
I saw that online, nuclear physics. I don't know anything about nuclear physics, so I might ask you what on earth it is and whether it's helped with game development later on. We'll park that one for a second. I would have picked up on that. If I had done an introduction for you, I so would have been leading with that one. That's the things we like to hear about. Can you introduce Larian to us a little bit? And you'll notice I have to keep looking at my notes here, but then looking over the glasses, so that's not putting you off too much. What do we need to know about Larian as a studio? Because people have seen a few bits, I'm sure, but what do we need to know?
I mean, probably these days we're known for this game that did relatively well called Baulder.
Yeah.
Originally, year 96, city of Guildford, Belgium, is where he starts the studio, just himself and a couple of others. They were always one of the origins. Yeah, and kind of took off from there. I've been through many turbulent times, fortunately, still here, still here. But yeah, I've always stayed true to the spirit of making great games that we like to play ourselves. Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it.
It's a brilliant ambition to make a game that you love playing yourself, and I hope that other people will play it. So we might come back to explore how you found out that people might like that. But you mentioned Baldur's Gate there, an amazing IP, something that's been around for a while actually, and got a lot of followers. But I'm particularly interested in the challenges that you might face when you have an IP. You know, IP being intellectual property, something which you own, something which you created and crafted. Are there sort of pitfalls and challenges of working with IP?
I think it's incredibly challenging generally, I would say. I think we were quite lucky at the point because almost like everything collided at the right moment because we were like rating ourselves and learning. And Wizards also approached us by themselves.
Right. That's Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. Okay. I think they were impressed by the work of Divinity originals too. That's what we did. And I feel it's just everything and everyone has been ready and like willing and building out to this for that very moment. But generally, I would say it's very challenging in my opinion because you kind of always start with a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, and also, I guess, quite often that you have to pay like a lot of fees due to like for the license.
Yes.
So you kind of start with a negative P&L as you start. So you have to. I don't think it's a good option for a studio just starting without like a very well developed team and resources of their own that they can use.
Because of the costs that are associated with it.
And because of the pressure as well. I think we can often see how it may not live up to the public expectations.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you're looking at as well is you're thinking people who played the original games and they've got relationships, deep relationships, formed in childhood with these characters that were now inherited, and now we have to make them both feel new enough that you feel like you've got a new game experience, but at the same time they have to feel familiar to the memory and honour that. So I remember it's one of the things we were thinking about with Jadira and Vincent, and thinking, well, how do you make them familiar, but well, if we age Jadira and she's lived a life between last time we met her and this time, then but it's still her. So it's someone that you recognise, someone you still have that connection with, but it's also you're establishing a new relationship with them.
Even more complicated when writing a story, though, when there is already story and plot lines there.
Yeah.
How on earth do you do that? I mean, that's.
I think you just don't let go get in the way of it.
Right.
And I think and also,
so law's the problem.
Well, it's both. I think it can be both. But I think it's if you think the story and the characters are the things that people care about, and you don't lose sight of that, then the other stuff. If you're lucky enough to have a partner in business that gives you that freedom to find where to go to make the best experience.
So there's a little bit of give and take there with the IPO, but that sounds like a positive relationship. If we think about startup studios trying to create their own IP, I'm quite focused on that business. I'm sorry, that's who I am. It's an ambition for lots of studios to try and create their own intellectual property, something that they can do. You talked about buying in IP being very expensive, but and we always hear that investors want to work with studios that have got their own IP. That's what they think. That's what they think the value is. But how can an indie studio that's just starting out, or they've had a little bit of success, how can they go about creating something which then is classified as IP and something they can build upon?
I mean, it's a little question. If we had an answer, this would be doing much better. But I generally think that, like, Baulder is an option to start out, to get some capital for yourself and to build up a team and to build up experience to then move on to something that you envision yourself creating. I think that's more or less what we did at the beginning, because Larian originally, it's been many years, I don't know 100% correct the history, but I think Larian did some more development with different projects with the publishers before moving on to create the Divinity franchise. So I would say it's quite common to first focus on accumulating the resources and users.
Yes, getting the business in a decent state first. I want to go back to the writing bit, because it's something I don't understand actually, sorry to say that, but it's a really important part, increasingly important in the creative process to do with games as we try and push ourselves to be that sort of high culture thing, because people still look at games with a bit of snobbery, certainly from other creative industries, and don't think we're on a par with them. Well, you're changing that with these amazing narratives and stories that you create. What's your sort of creative approach to crafting a story? You've got a blank piece of paper in front of you. What's the process?
I think there's a number of parts of what's defining and then realise I haven't listed them up. But so one aspect is you're always absorbing.
Right.
Whatever you produce is the sum of what's inside you. So fill yourself with as much of the stories that are out there and stuff that's out there, stuff that makes you feel stuff. And then there comes a point where once you're full, you need to start condensing and distilling what is the stuff that made you feel the most, or you want to tell the most. And I think at that point as well, you've got that, but in you and in everyone else around you. And so you've got really powerful and high-minded engine storytellers. And you're pulling what is all the stuff that we've all consumed and loved. And what do we like about it? What can we do with that from our own angles? It comes up into a story that we all need. And then in the middle of that, you find the thread of the story that we all collectively want to tell.
That sounds like a nightmare. Lots of people sitting around, they've all got their own stories that they want to tell.
You need I think we're very lucky in that Sven has a very good vision.
Right.
It's very good communicating as well.
Yeah.
He steers us. We do get lots of weeds. And we need a person and always bring shit back on track. This is no way.
I love that idea. Actually, I know it sounds like a nightmare, but imagine the creative energy you can get with a group of people together. So what are your influences then, Chrystal? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Everything, which is a really cheap answer, but generally everything. I think a lot of the time from TV and film, I definitely look to them for how do you distill emotional experience in a scene in a way that's very tight. And, they've got a short amount of time to deliver such emotional impact. So I looked at books as well, because especially books are very good at building expansive worlds and thinking what all the questions you might ask and answer outside of just the story itself. Because my background as well is in photojournalism, so I do look to the real world, because the real world is weird. And look at what's the weird stuff in it, and there's so many strange things out there that you can just kind of go, wow, that already is a story.
So have you got a scrapbook of weird? Is that what you've got?
I keep a, have you heard of Arena? It's like a movie book. Yeah, but essentially, yes.
And so, I was going to be rude about the film and TV industry for a second. I'll bring that in. I might come back to it in a second and see what mood I'm in and move forward in a second myself. Thinking about other games that are out there, what games would you like to have worked on that you haven't worked on?
Oh my gosh. Well, as a writer, I do really appreciate Divinity.
Okay.
It's got a very well built world, very interesting characters in it, and it's got this sense of depth which you feel when you're in the world. It feels like they've thought about how this world is to live in, not just the interactions I have with it in the context of playing the game. It's like, this is actually a believable world. I think I respect the hell out of that.
They're a whole bunch as well, so I can understand.
I've never met them.
Well, I'll connect you to them so you can tell them how good their game is.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll have one big love it, they'll be complimentary back to you as well. Arthur, just can I ask you about sort of the challenges of development across multiple studios? So, Larian, you've got 4 or 5 different locations, something like that. That must be difficult to coordinate all of that. Again, part of this creative process and getting studios together. How does that work? And are there any specific sort of challenges or lessons that you've learned through working with multiple studios on one development?
I think I was told all the studios in every location were like a hub or attraction for the talent in that location.
Yeah.
So, we generally try to base them where we see what different talent we could attract to those locations. At the same time, we're very, we like the idea of what we call 24-hour development, meaning like not crunching all the time, but rather the moment people gather in our studio kind of transition into the evening, our Ukie Studios get to work, and then our Larian Studio gets to work, so it's kind of another cycle. And you always have somebody online in their working time who you can ask a question about something related to your job. Because we also build our studios with the presence of every team. And if you think about it from a management perspective, like if you say a lead program, you don't need to think as much as different time zones or locations. You have your program spread across our locations, and you just need to think about which task, which thing to give to somebody who's like more suited for it. So it's more like distributed points of development that are all working on the same thing. So
that requires having an understanding of what the respective skills are in each of those different studios, which must be a challenge itself. Like you, what's the head count? Are you 150?
I would say it's about 60 to 80 at every location.
At every location, yeah.
Like 60 to 90, more like this, yeah. And in total, we're about 500 now.
Okay, right. Have you ever woken up and gone, those bloody Canadians have done something in the game overnight I don't like?
It sounds good, but also there are challenges, there are things that...
You do that to them, you're the troublemakers.
I wouldn't say that each of the studios have like very specific particular focus that they single-handedly focus on, but obviously there is some bias or like a bigger presence of a certain talent or discipline in a certain location that's like less present in the other one. But normally we try to make a balance in every studio, shaping it up for the future, but we'll be able to talk about this later. But what exactly we will want to do this sort of structure.
Yeah, I'm not going to put you on the spot on this, what you've got coming up next. That's for you to decide if you want to reveal anything. Well, let's talk about, you talk about having sort of medium-sized teams in lots of different locations. 60 people is a decent number of people, a hard number to control. It comes to the point when you stop recognising everyone in the office, when you get to that sort of level, or you're pretty good. Let's talk about Guildford. So, of all of the locations, why have you chosen Guildford? And maybe we'll talk about talent, I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
For us it was, so we worked with a company originally called Turbulence. Some people here might know it, run by James Austin. So we worked with them for a few years, and then after some time of fruitful collaborations, I guess just decided that they should join the family, and they did, fortunately for us. So now it's Larian Guildford. So we kind of took them in, and I guess it's more of a question at this point why they chose Guildford. And I guess they use it because it's sort of like one of the major hubs in the UK for the
Yeah.
industry. You have, what, 17 PhD students here?
Indeed.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's plenty of talent. It's easy to network, collaborate, meet people, go to a work business. Which is 10 minutes from our studio to do. So, yeah, this would be like the main reasons. Also, it's, I guess, much more accessible than like London in terms of like moving in and settling down and working here. Much more suitable for families as well, I would say.
Yeah, good standard of living here as well. Have you found that as well since? Have you moved to? You've always been in Guildford, though, haven't you?
No, I've got a weird setup, so I live in an apartment in London.
Right. Okay.
I kind of want to break walls. It's not like being here, guys, so like, my heart works.
So both of you are outsiders, actually, Londoners that are travelling to Guildford. I didn't know that. I should have asked you a more challenging question about why you moved. Is it the parking? Is that the problem? Parking's terrible in Guildford.
I would say it's a great, quiet, home place for when you kind of settle down. Yeah, when you have a family, when you want to put down roots. I think that's what I would do like in 10-15 years. But right now, it's like when you're single young and travelers, you want some life and so on.
So Guildford for other people that we make it up.
I mean, yeah, it also depends on the state of mind, really.
Oh, and having set up and grown a team here, what's the talent like in Guildford? Are there any particular sort of strengths or weaknesses, perhaps, that the local area needs to work on?
I feel like it's something, at least because the last year was so busy, like this year, it's something we really started to get to know it now, and that's one of the really nice things. Like, stuff like the Games Festival like this, and we're starting to kind of be like, hello, we've come out our hall now, who else is here? And you want to say hi, and people, there, and just start that journey.
But it's good that you're here and you're starting. That sounds like an open invitation for everyone to start working on their own and having conversations. In fact, when you came to Guildford Festival, I dropped you in a room with the local MP, didn't I? Yeah? Did you? She's not a particularly popular person. Yeah. How did you get on with her? What did you think?
I think a lot of things were taken on board. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see some positive change as well. Yes, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, but we like them on what politicians are important. They are the people that have shape sort of local and national economic development and opportunities. So we do have to work with them and just keep getting the message across, which is why it's fabulous that a studio like Larian, who is so successfully internationally set up here in the UK, so that we can help each other. We can get you out there a little bit more and benefit from association.
Dialogue is good.
Look, what, sorry,
The dialogue is good, like a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what about the writing talent in Guildford, if we look at that specifically for you, Chrystal? Does that exist here, or does that not matter to you?
It matters to me. I'm not sure how best to find it.
Yeah.
We put ourselves in all places that we know that writers show up, and often we run into people who are based in Guildford. I don't know if they will hang out somewhere specifically in Guildford.
Maybe it's a secret club.
If there's a club, I've not found it.
Yeah.
I'm still looking. But yeah, we definitely meet people, even things published authors, Guildford-based authors. I run into them, not always in Guildford, but I know there's something going on.
Do you think the writers understand that there is an opportunity in games for them? You said you came through a sort of circuitous route, just made that word up, to get into the industry. But do you think that is a bit of an issue with the industry trying to attract talent from different areas because they just don't know the opportunities?
I feel like it's getting better, as in I was definitely years ago a person who didn't know that was a thing. And I know people now who are like, I want to do that thing specifically. The thing that I'm conscious of is that you've got people who study game design and know games, and they know that they exist, but people who might want to do games in industry, who can write, don't know it's something that they might be interested in.
Yeah, we've got a couple of educators in the room here at some of the local colleges. There might be a conversation afterwards to see what they're doing in this particular space, or at least coming in and broadening the horizons of some of the people doing those courses, because there might be some amazing writers who think they're going to be developers or coders.
Yes, we don't always specifically target game writers, either.
Indeed.
People who can write well and write well. So.
Yes. And neither of you then have a sort of, there isn't really a traditional games background anyway, but you're good examples of how people from outside can find their way into games, which is interesting. Do you want to tell us about your background? Has it helped at all an understanding of some of these
It's more compared to video games.
Right.
My thesis that I tried working with my group. It's an industry that operates on breakthroughs of TSO that has many plenty of problems right now, heavily regulated by governments in different countries. So I've been into video games since I was 7 years old. So
Right.
it was like a life dream. But I can always go back into calculating the facts of regulation.
Yeah. It sounds like it should be quite heavily regulated if you think about it.
You don't want to say about being able to do the ranges.
So less regulation of games, more in the society. I want to give people the floor an opportunity to ask any questions. I've got loads more to talk about, but just a couple more things. So any questions from the audience? James, you can't ask what the next game is.
Apart from that, how big is the writing team?
Smaller than you think. For the size of the game, I think it was, I always get this number wrong, it was between 11 and 13. So
That's 12 between 11 and 13.
I'm trying to think that some of us, we not 100% on writing, so sort of the number of full writers, I think somewhere around.
And what's the total number of people working on Baldur's Gate then as a total? So there's, let's say 12 for argument's sake. Is it everyone in the company working on that project for a period of time? So that's a reasonable percentage then, isn't it?
Yeah, very much. You mean as in sort of that was the whole writing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all.
Yeah, I wonder how many studios have got that many writers, or need that many writers out there. Probably not many. Great question. Anything else from the audience? Costs,
I was wondering if you could speak more to the point you made earlier about wanting recognizable love in IP, where people in the audience have preconceptions, people in the development team have preconceptions about what the story or the side stories or anything should be about, and how you navigate that when you're working on something as massive as because I think you mentioned something about sort of capitalism and arbitrary. Was that kind of the go-to solution for those situations?
Yeah, it depends on I'll go to some solutions, but the navigation, I think there's a part where you start by trusting the development around you. So if you come up with an idea and the team internally is like, no, that's a terrible idea, there's a lot of them saying that, you should probably listen. Once you've got to the point where a lot of the team are like, yeah, we're on board with this, we think this is really cool, we think it's really fun, we think this will go well with players. There's a trickiness because there's the benefit is obviously Baldur's Gate benefits from early access, where you can get to see what the players actually thought of certain things. There's also certain things where you don't necessarily want it immediately put in their hands because you've got to fully working through, and you don't want it to be immediately torn apart by feedback that may not have seen the end goal that you had in your mind that you think about it. So it's kind of finding that balance, but the one thing that you do eventually get to is closing things, right? And that's the point where it doesn't matter what you thought it was going to be. Someone's going to tell you, well, I like it or I don't like it for reasons. And so I think it's kind of mapping, finding where is the right moment to introduce the other voices in the room and then really responding to that feedback. Because if you put it at the wrong moment, you might get the right feedback, but it's come at the wrong time and it throws you off course. But if you get it at the right moment, it's just incredibly powerful. I think we had some strokes of good timing with that.
We'll take it as a compliment that film and TV are now basing their new programmes on game time. There's always been, I don't know how many times I've been contacted by writers in the past saying, I've got this brilliant book I've written, I've never heard of it, but they can you get me a game deal because I want my story to go into a game. It's totally different now, it's the other way around. So the work that you're creating as a company is now being licensed out into other organisations to make TV and film programs. We're seeing more and more of that, and that's a real good sign for the development and the recognition of games. So I didn't quite put the boot in on film and TV with their very linear experiences. But it's amazing and it's brilliant that you're doing this work. And it's fabulous that you've got an office here in Guildford and helping us raise the profile of the local area. So thank you for doing that, and thanks for coming out and talking to us this evening. And we will create lots of opportunities for you to get out there and talk to more people in the future. So can you put your hands together and thank our barriers, a pizza and a bar, so